He didn't want to be a part. He didn't want to be a wheeler dealer anymore. Wheeler Dealers is a popular show that followed Mike Brewer and Ed China as they restored classic cars, combining Mike's expert buying skills with Ed's mechanical know-how. For over a decade, the duo worked together to bring old cars back to life, entertaining and educating fans worldwide. But 7 years ago, Ed China suddenly left the show, leaving fans shocked and curious about the real reason behind his departure. Now, Mike Brewer finally breaks his silence to reveal the truth about why Ed really left Wheeler Dealers. And it's not as simple as everyone thought. This revelation sheds new light on one of the most talked about exits in reality TV, leaving fans wondering if the iconic duo's friendship can ever be repaired. The end of an era, 13 years together. For more than a decade, Mike and Ed formed the beating heart of Wheeler Dealers, a show that won fans across the globe. From the very first episode, their partnership felt natural. Mike's knack for finding hidden car gems matched perfectly with Ed's impressive mechanical skills. Together, they created a unique formula that mixed charm, expertise, and genuine enthusiasm for classic cars. Over the years, the show became a must-watch for car lovers. Mike, with his quick wit and a keen eye for deals, could spot potential where others saw rust and trouble. Meanwhile, Ed was the wizard in the workshop, transforming worn-down wrecks into showpieces with detailed repairs and restorations. Their chemistry was clear. Mike handled the hunt, and Ed did the magic. The bond wasn't just professional. Fans sensed the friendship that grew behind the cameras. Their banter was light but respectful. Their shared passion for cars undeniable. For 13 years, Mike and Ed carried Wheeler Dealers to impressive heights, building a loyal audience that tuned in week after week. But by 2017, after all those years side by side, the partnership reached a turning point. Changes were quietly happening behind the scenes, changes that would shake the foundation of the show. For Mike and Ed, it was a moment when paths that had once been so closely aligned began to diverge. This wasn't a sudden break. Instead, it was a slow shift, like a car veering slightly off course. Small at first, but hard to correct. Mike would later say that the split wasn't caused by fights or personal conflicts. Yet it was clear that something had shifted in their dynamic, something that even the most loyal fans didn't fully understand. In fact, the parting surprised many. Ed was not just any co-host. He was the mechanical heart of the show, the one who explained every bolt and rebuild with care. His departure left a noticeable gap. Rumors swirled, fans speculated, but no clear explanation was given at the time. Behind the scenes, however, there were hints that things weren't as smooth as they appeared on screen. The 2017 split marked the end of an era, one that many hoped would never come. And while Mike stayed quiet for years, recently he has started to open up, revealing sides of the story fans had only guessed at. But what really caused Ed to leave after such a long run? Best gems. For more than a decade, Mike Brewer and Ed China worked together to bring classic cars back to life on Wheeler Dealers. Their chemistry and passion made the show a favorite among car lovers worldwide. But what really made the show stand out were the cars they restored and the deals they made, some of which became unforgettable episodes. One of their best deals involved a 1966 Mustang Fastback. Mike found this car in rough shape, but saw potential. With Ed's expert mechanical skills, they brought it back from a rusty, worn-down shell to a sleek, powerful classic. The episode showcased Ed's trademark attention to detail and Mike's knack for spotting great bargains. Fans loved watching the transformation unfold, seeing every step from engine rebuilds to the final polish. Another standout was the 1973 Citroën SM, a rare and unusual car. This episode was special because it wasn't just about restoration. It was a challenge. Ed's workshop skills were pushed to the limit, fixing the complex engine and parts that are hard to find. Mike's enthusiasm for the quirky car made the episode entertaining, and the deal they made to buy it was seen as a bold move. This episode highlighted how the show combined mechanical know-how with smart buying. The 1968 Ford Bronco episode also stands out as a fan favorite. Mike found this rugged classic in California, and Ed worked hard to restore its off-road charm. The show balanced practical restoration with lifestyle appeal, showing how these cars can still be enjoyed today. Their work on the Bronco reminded viewers why classic vehicles are more than just metal. They're stories on wheels. There was also the 1965 Jaguar I-Pace, a true icon. This episode was memorable for the care Ed put into preserving the car's original features, while upgrading its performance. Mike's ability to negotiate a fair price made the deal a win for the show and the fans. The episode combined elegance with practical restoration, showing the duo's range and versatility. What made these episodes special was the way Mike and Ed complemented each other. Mike's eye for good deals and his friendly, relatable style drew viewers in. Ed's deep mechanical knowledge and step-by-step explanations educated and entertained at the same time. Together, they made complex car restoration feel accessible and exciting. These best cars and deals became more than just episodes. They became landmarks of wheeler dealer success. They showed that with the right mix of passion, skill, and business sense, classic cars could be saved and enjoyed again. Fans still talk about these episodes as highlights, proof of what made the show special and why they miss Ed. Brewing tensions. By 2017, wheeler dealers had been a staple in car restoration television for over a decade. But beneath the surface of the show's steady success, subtle changes were brewing. Changes that would challenge the core of what made the show special. Especially for Ed. Mike had long been the driving force behind the show's broader appeal. He understood the importance of keeping audiences entertained and drawing in new viewers. Over the years, he had seen the market shift. More people wanted fast-paced action and flashy reveals, and less time was spent on the kind of detailed, technical workshop scenes that Ed was famous for. Ed's workshop sequences were a major highlight for many fans, especially those passionate about the nuts and bolts of restoration. Watching him strip down engines, diagnose tricky problems, and patiently explain the mechanics was like a masterclass for car enthusiasts. It was this depth that gave wheeler dealers its authenticity and made it stand out from other car shows. But the world of television is a changing one. As the show's producers looked to refresh the format and appeal to a broader audience, the plan was to cut back on some of those long workshop sequences. Instead, the focus would shift towards more dramatic car findiness, faster turnarounds, and lifestyle elements. This wasn't just a creative choice. It was a strategic decision aimed at keeping the show relevant in a crowded market. For Mike, this evolution made sense. He believed the show needed to move forward, reaching beyond the traditional car geek audience, to attract new viewers and maintain its place on television. However, this change hit Ed hard. His passion was in those detailed repairs, the patient craftsmanship, and the explanation that defined his role. From Mike's perspective, the shift wasn't personal. It was business. He often talked about balancing entertainment with education, trying to keep the show lively without losing its roots. But for Ed, the proposed changes felt like a compromise of everything he stood for. Ed became increasingly frustrated with the show's new direction. The reduction of workshop time wasn't just a tweak. It cut into what gave Ed purpose on the show. It was his specialty, his element. To lose that meant losing his voice and creative control over a project he had been so deeply invested in. The tension wasn't about money or fame. It was about creative integrity. Ed wanted wheeler dealers to remain true to its original spirit. Mike, on the other hand, saw the need for evolution to keep the show afloat and exciting in a changing media landscape. This divide grew quietly but steadily, like a car engine running rough without obvious warning signs. Neither Mike nor Ed wanted to make a public fuss. Both respected the show's legacy and each other's contributions. But behind closed doors, discussions became more difficult. Mike has said that while there was disappointment, there was no personal bitterness or feud. The split was not born of anger, but of differing visions and priorities. Mike respected Ed's decision to leave and didn't want to fight over it, but that didn't mean the split was easy or without emotional cost. At the time, fans were left guessing. Ed's sudden departure was announced without much detail, and many hoped it was just a break or a temporary absence. But the truth was that these creative differences were deep and fundamental. Mike's reflections now show that the changes to the show's format were a key factor that pushed Ed to reconsider his future. The reduction in detailed workshop content went beyond a simple edit. It touched on Ed's identity as a craftsman and as a presenter. The situation created a growing distance between them. Ed felt sidelined, as if his expertise was being overshadowed by entertainment needs. Mike, meanwhile, had to balance the demands of production, audience expectations, and network pressures. As the differences mounted, so did Ed's frustration, not just professionally, but personally. Mike noticed that Ed's enthusiasm for the show was waning. He seemed less comfortable with the lifestyle that filming demanded, particularly the long hours indoors in the California climate, which didn't suit him. Breaking point. By the time tensions were rising over the show's changing direction, there was more going on than just creative differences. Filming Wheeler Dealers wasn't just about restoring cars. It was a demanding lifestyle, and it wasn't one that suited Ed anymore. Ed had always been the workshop man, the one who loved getting his hands dirty in the garage. His passion was the careful, precise work that transformed rusty old cars into stunning restorations. But as Wheeler Dealers evolved, the demands of filming changed, especially when production shifted to sunnier climates like California. Mike often talks about how the California sunshine brought a different energy to filming. The long days, the outdoor shoots, and the buzz of the entertainment industry made the experience feel less like a traditional workshop and more like a TV production. For Mike, this was exciting and part of the show's natural growth, but for Ed, the lifestyle was tougher. He preferred the focus and calm of the workshop and the steady pace of mechanical work without distractions. The shift toward more outdoor shoots, fast timelines, and TV-friendly content meant spending less time in the workshop and more time on camera in settings that didn't align with his preferences. Mike noticed Ed's frustration growing, not just professionally, but personally. The long hours filming in the heat, the pace of production, and the change in atmosphere weren't comfortable for Ed. His enthusiasm for the show started to wane as the fun of hands-on restoration gave way to the pressures of a fast-moving TV schedule. The lifestyle strain wasn't a minor detail. It affected Ed deeply. Ed is someone who values his freedom and time outdoors. Being locked in a workshop, especially under the glare of constant filming, was a challenge. This discomfort added to the creative disagreements over the show's direction. It wasn't just that Ed felt his role was shrinking. It was that the entire environment no longer felt right for him. The passion that had driven him for years was fading, replaced by a growing sense of dissatisfaction. Behind the scenes, Mike observed these changes with concern. He respected Ed and didn't want to push him into a situation that felt wrong. But as the production demands increased and the show's format shifted, there was less room for compromise. Despite the strains, Mike has been clear that their split wasn't fueled by fights or harsh words. There was no dramatic falling out. Instead, it was a quiet drift apart, a recognition that their paths were no longer aligned. This subtle but growing distance was difficult for both men. They had shared so many years and so much success. But as Ed's frustration mounted, the partnership began to fray. Mike's perspective is important here. He acknowledges the difficulty of balancing the show's evolution with the needs of his co-host. He said that while he understood Ed's feelings, he also had to look after the show's future, which sometimes meant making tough decisions. This period was marked by a growing gap, not just in creative vision, but in lifestyle and personal priorities. Ed's preference for a quieter, more focused working environment clashed with the show's push toward broader entertainment. For viewers, the split might have seemed sudden, but behind the cameras, it was the result of months, even years of changes that chipped away at the foundation of their partnership. What neither man expected was how public the aftermath would become. After leaving Wheeler Dealers, Ed began to voice his frustrations openly, criticizing the show's new direction. Mike, however, chose silence, avoiding a public back and forth. The final goodbye, a Paris hotel, and silent regrets. Sometimes endings are not marked by shouting or dramatic confrontations. Instead, they come quietly in moments, shared between old friends who know their paths are about to diverge. For Mike and Ed, their last meeting before the split happened like this, in a hotel room in Paris. Paris was not a planned farewell destination. It was just where their filming schedule brought them. But looking back, Mike describes that evening as a bittersweet pause, a chance to reflect on what had been and what was about to change. The two had worked side by side for 13 years. They had built a successful show, shared countless laughs and frustrations, and become a duo beloved by fans around the world. But by that point, their relationship was strained. The creative disagreements and lifestyle differences had created distance, even if they had never allowed it to become public. Mike recalls that evening with a sense of regret. Over drinks, the mood was more reflective than celebratory. There was an unspoken understanding that things were ending, not with anger, but with sadness. They didn't argue or rehash old conflicts. Instead, they talked quietly about the show, their futures, and how things had changed. It was a moment of honesty, but also of acceptance. Both knew that Ed's departure was inevitable. Mike wished things had ended differently. He had hoped they might find a way to bridge the gap, but deep down, he knew their visions were too different. Still, the friendship they'd shared made the partying harder. After that night in Paris, they went their separate ways. The cameras captured Mike, continuing Wheeler Dealers with new co-hosts, while Ed moved on to new projects, mainly through his own YouTube channel, where he could focus on the kind of detailed restorations he loved. What made this farewell particularly poignant was the respect between them. There was no bad blood, no explosive falling out, just a sad ending to a chapter that had once been full of promise and partnership. But beneath the surface, Mike also admits to disappointment. Ed's public criticism of the show after leaving stung. Mike chose not to respond, not wanting to escalate things publicly. Yet those comments left a mark, deepening the emotional distance. Since then, attempts to reconnect have been met with limited success. Mike reached out a few times, hoping to rebuild some form of communication, but Ed has kept his distance. This silence speaks volumes. It shows that while there was respect, the split had deeper consequences than just the end of a show. It was the loss of a close working relationship, and a friendship challenged by time and differing priorities. This final meeting in Paris is a snapshot of a moment frozen in time. A quiet goodbye filled with regret, respect, and unspoken goodbyes. The real reason Ed left. For years, fans of Wheeler Dealers speculated about why Ed China left the show after 13 years. The official story always pointed to creative differences, changes in the show's direction, and lifestyle clashes. But Mike Brewer's recent comments add a new and more revealing dimension to the story, one that sheds light on the real reasons behind Ed's departure. Mike doesn't shy away from the truth. While he emphasizes there was no bitter feud or falling out, he admits that the split was harder and more complicated than previously known. It wasn't just about reducing workshop time or Ed's discomfort with the filming lifestyle. There was a deeper disappointment involved, one that came from how things unfolded after Ed decided to leave. Mike Brewer breaks the silence on why Ed China really left Wheeler Dealers. And it's not good. Mike's decision to speak out wasn't easy, but he made it. It's time to tell the truth. Fans deserve to know, as they are the ones who made the show possible. At the core, Mike reveals Ed's decision wasn't taken lightly. It was a response to feeling increasingly sidelined and underappreciated as the show evolved. The reduction of detailed workshop content was a symptom of a larger issue. Ed sensed that his role and expertise were no longer valued the way they once were. But what really hurt Mike was how Ed handled his departure publicly. Instead of a quiet exit, Ed chose to voice criticism about the show and its direction on social media and other platforms. Mike describes this as a personal disappointment because it painted the show and indirectly him in a negative light. Mike explains that after Ed left, there were moments when he wanted to respond to set the record straight, but he deliberately chose silence, wanting to avoid a public feud and to preserve the dignity of their long partnership. This silence, however, created a one-sided narrative that left fans wondering and sometimes judging Mike's side unfairly. It also deepened the emotional distance between the two men. Adding to this was Ed's reluctance to reconnect, despite Mike's attempts to reach out. Mike has admitted that while he hoped for reconciliation, the effort wasn't reciprocated. This lack of communication compounded the disappointment and made the split feel even more final. Interestingly, Mike also reveals that Ed's frustration was not just about the show's format, but about the changing dynamics between them. The friendship that had supported 13 years of work was strained by unspoken feelings and unmet expectations. Mike's reflections show a man who is honest about his regrets, but also clear-eyed about the realities. He doesn't blame Ed for leaving. He understands why it was necessary. But he does wish the partying had been handled differently, with more mutual respect in the public eye. This nuanced perspective gives fans a new understanding. It's not a story of villains or heroes, but of two professionals whose paths diverged in ways neither wanted, but both had to accept. Mike's revelations also explain why the split felt so final, and why Ed's departure left a gap, not only on the show, but in Mike's own life. He speaks candidly about the loneliness of moving forward without his longtime partner, and how difficult it was to continue Wheeler Dealers without Ed's expertise and personality. Despite this, Mike remains proud of the show's legacy and its continued success with new co-hosts. He's focused on the future, but carries the past with him, especially the memories of a friendship and partnership that shaped so much. Aftermath and new beginnings. The departure of Ed left a lasting impact, not just on the show, but on fans and both men involved. After Mike Brewer's recent revelations, it's clear the split was more complex than anyone realized. And the aftermath has been a mix of reflection, change, and cautious hope for the future. For the show itself, losing Ed was a major shift. Ed's detailed workshop knowledge and signature style were central to the program's identity. Mike faced the challenge of keeping the show engaging without one of its original stars. Over the years, Mike brought in new co-hosts, each bringing their own flavor and expertise. But the chemistry they had with Ed was unique and difficult to replicate. Despite this, Wheeler Dealers continued to thrive. Mike's commitment to the show's legacy and his passion for classic cars kept it alive and growing. Fans remained loyal even as the format evolved, proving that the show's appeal went beyond just one person. On the fan front, opinions have been mixed. Many viewers expressed sadness at the loss of Ed's presence, missing his meticulous, hands-on approach. Others appreciated the show's continued evolution and the new energy brought by different co-hosts. The fan community remains passionate and divided, but united by a love for classic cars and restoration. For Ed, the split allowed him to focus on projects that suited his style and passion. His YouTube channel became a space where he could engage with his audience on his terms, diving deep into restorations and mechanics without the constraints of a TV show format. This independence gave him creative freedom and connected him with a different kind of audience. Mike and Ed's relationship remains distant, but not forgotten. Mike's attempts to reconnect show a willingness to heal old wounds, but the response hasn't yet led to renewed friendship. It's a reminder that sometimes, even after years of working together, people grow apart in ways that aren't easy to bridge. Mike's honesty about the split has opened doors for new conversations, both between the two men privately and among fans publicly. It's also a chance for fans to appreciate the complexity behind long-term partnerships in the entertainment industry. Looking forward, Mike continues to focus on Wheeler Dealers and his role as a presenter and car enthusiast. He's shown resilience and adaptability, qualities that have helped keep the show relevant. Ed, meanwhile, seems to be carving out his own path, emphasizing quality, detail, and connection with viewers who appreciate his expertise. While the past can't be changed, Mike's recent openness suggests there's hope for understanding, even if a full reunion remains uncertain. And maybe, just maybe, the future still holds surprises for these two longtime friends, who once made Wheeler Dealers a beloved show for millions. Should the show have ended when Ed left? Let us know in the comments.